Ooh, this woman says, I'm leaving you because you don't love me. I'm leaving you because you don't love me. And he says, what? I do love you. And she says, no, you don't. And he says, I've worked hard for 10 years just so you could be happy. I've worked hard for 10 years just so you could be happy. She says, you never tell me you love me. You never tell me you love me. And he says, I did tell you. When? Last year. In this lesson, I want to talk about a book that I read called The 5 Love Languages, written by a guy named Gary Chapman. Okay, The 5 Love Languages. Now, I read this book a long time ago, years ago, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, but I still remember this book very well because it made me think. Any book that makes you think is a good book, right? So I still remember it very well, and I've had a lot of conversations with people about the topic in this book, and it always leads to very interesting conversations. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit about this book and talk about it. Now, this guy, Gary Chapman, is a psychologist, I think, and a marriage counselor. Okay, now the main idea in this book is that people feel love in different ways. Okay, that's his main idea, and he calls those love languages. Okay, so if you feel love in a certain way, you have a love language, and if I feel love in a different way, I have a different love language. Okay, so those are love languages. Now, he says there are 5 main love languages. Okay, 5 main love languages. This is his idea. Okay, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, gifts, and physical touch. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about each of these a little bit more. Now, his idea is that people very often speak different love languages. So if you want to prevent your relationship from falling apart, you need to learn how to speak the other person's love language. And you might not know how to speak one of these love languages. So you have to learn your partner's love language. Okay, so let's take a look at each of these here. So the first one, words of affirmation. Affirmation. What does affirmation mean? Well, it basically means encouragement. Encouragement, like this. Your English is so great. You're so beautiful. I missed you so much. You're so smart. Okay, these are words of affirmation. They're words of encouragement, right? Okay, so that's one love language. Let's take a look at another one. Acts of service. Let's say that guy put in a long day at work. A long day at work. He's tired. He comes home from work and his wife has prepared a very nice dinner. Wow, that's so nice. That's an act of service, right? Or let's say this woman's sister is in the hospital, very sick. So she goes to visit her sister and she's at the hospital all day, and she comes back home after a long day and her husband has done the laundry. He's done the laundry. Okay, great. That's an act of service. Okay, so some people feel very loved when they receive, acts of service. Let's look at another one. Quality time. Quality time. Some people feel very loved when they get to spend good time, with another person. Like maybe going for a walk, in a park, or, maybe reading a book together or doing something together. A very, very good time together. That's quality time. Okay. Let's look at another one. Gifts. Okay. Maybe she's giving him a surprise gift. She loves giving gifts. Maybe that's his love language. he feels so loved when he gets gifts. Or maybe her love language is getting gifts too, right? So he's giving her some flowers. Maybe that will make her feel really loved. Okay, so some people love getting gifts. Now, another one, physical touch. Okay, physical touch. Some people really need to be close to another person physically, like holding hands, hugging, maybe cuddling. That's how they feel loved. Okay, so the main idea of this book is that people have different love languages, right? Now, Gary Chapman says that in his experience, in his how many years, I don't know how many years he's been a marriage counselor, but in all his experience, he has found that usually people have one main love language, and maybe a secondary love language. Okay, usually a main one, maybe a secondary one. Now, in this book, there is a test, I think it's a multiple choice. I'm not sure how many questions there are. It's a fun test to see what your love language is. Okay, so it's sort of a fun thing to take. For example, that guy, he might have words of affirmation as his main love language, and he might have, acts of service as his secondary love language. This woman, quality time is her main love language, and gifts are her secondary love language. Okay? So the idea Gary Chapman says is that people have a love tank in their mind or in their heart. Okay? Everybody has a love tank where they feel loved. Okay, if a person feels really loved, then their love tank is full. They're happy. They just feel great. They feel loved. And if a person's love tank is empty, that means they're not happy. They don't feel loved. It's just they're sad. They're not full of joy. Full of in a relationship when you feel really great, you feel like there's connection with the other person. That's what it would feel like if your love tank is full. And when your love tank is empty, you feel distant from that person. Do they even love me? Do they know I exist? Do they want to have a relationship with me? Okay, so ideally, both people would have a full love tank. That would be a healthy, happy relationship, right? So ideally, that should happen. But realistically, he says in his book that a lot of relationships are like this, where one person's love tank is pretty good, maybe it's full, and the other person's love tank is almost empty. So a relationship can be really unbalanced like this, or maybe both people's love tank is really empty, and that's also bad, right? So let's take a look at this situation again. Okay, she says, I'm leaving you because you don't love me. So she doesn't feel loved. Okay, let's see what he says. He says, I do love you. So he does love her, in his opinion, right? And then she says, no, you don't. Okay, so then he says, I've worked hard for 10 years just so you could be happy. Okay, so he's trying hard. In his mind, he's trying very hard. And she says, you never tell me you love me. And he says, I did tell you. I did. And she says, when? And he says, last year. Okay, so he did tell her that he loved her, but she doesn't even remember that anymore because it was so long ago. So what do you think his love language is? What is the way he gives and receives love? Now, Gary Chapman, in his book, he says usually people give and receive love the same way. So if a person has one love language, the way they feel loved, that's usually the way they try to love other people. It might not always be that way, but usually that's the case. For example, if a person loves getting gifts, they usually also give other people lots of gifts too, right? So what do you think? Well, words of affirmation are probably not his love language because, he told her he loved her last year and he thinks that's fine. But obviously she doesn't think that's fine, right? So his love language is probably acts of service because remember what he said? I've worked so hard. He's trying hard. He's trying to show his wife he loves her by working so hard and serving her, right? But her love language is words of affirmation. So she doesn't feel loved when he tries so hard. He could try harder and harder and harder, but that wouldn't matter because that's not her love language, right? She needs this. She needs words of affirmation. Okay, so the problem here is that they are speaking different love languages. They're speaking different love languages. That is a problem in a relationship. Now, I want to take a few minutes to talk about gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes. A lot of people think women love gifts more than men, for example. Well, that is just not really true. I mean, I know a lot of women who don't even like gifts. They don't care about gifts. And I know a lot of men who love getting gifts, right? So sometimes we try to split up the genders and say this gender is like that and that gender is like that, right? There was a book published a long time ago. I think it was called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I never read the book, but if we just look at that title, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, that title suggests that men are this way and women are this way. Well, I don't think that's very true. I think in reality, women are all different ways. I mean, women might like this, some women might like that, this or that, some men like this or that. Everybody is different. We can't say men are like this and women are like this. It's not that easy. It's more complicated than that. Okay, so gender stereotypes means that we try to do that. We try to say, oh, well, if you're a man, you like this and you should do this and that. If you're a woman, you love getting gifts, you love flowers, you love everything like that. Now, in Western culture, men are not really allowed to like flowers. Okay, women like flowers, right? So if a man is holding a flower, that'd be very embarrassing, right? People would say, well, what is he doing? Why is he holding a flower? Are you a woman? Right? They might think that. So in our culture, men are not allowed to like flowers. But actually, I really like flowers. I like flowers. And in other cultures around the world, men are allowed to like flowers. So, these kinds of gender stereotypes are just ridiculous. They're just ridiculous. I don't even like them. Okay, one time I asked a girl this question. I said, imagine you were in a relationship. What would make you feel the most loved? And I gave her 5 options. Okay, so imagine you're in a relationship. What would make you feel the most loved? So the first option is this. Your boyfriend comes back from a trip and gives you a big hug and kiss and holds you for a long time. Okay? Your boyfriend is off on a trip. He comes back, gives you a big hug and a kiss and just holds you, maybe cuddles for a long time. That's the first option. The second option is your boyfriend comes back from a trip and says, I missed you so much. You're so beautiful. I missed you so much. You're so beautiful. Okay, that's the second option. The third option is your boyfriend comes back from a trip and brings you some beautiful flowers and diamond earrings. Wow, nice flowers and diamond earrings. So the fourth option is your boyfriend comes back from a trip and takes you for a long walk in the forest and reads you a book beside a lake. Wow, such great quality time, right? Nice walk in the forest, and then he reads you a nice book by the lake. That's great. Number 5, your boyfriend comes back from his trip 2 days earlier than he planned so he could paint your house for you while you were out of town visiting your grandparents. Okay, so you went out of your city, you went to another city to visit your grandparents, and your boyfriend came back from his trip 2 days earlier than he had planned so that he could paint your house and surprise you. Okay, so of these 5 options, if you are a woman, tell me which one would you choose? Which would be the most meaningful to you? Which would make you feel the most loved? What do you think the girl answered who I asked this question to? Right? I gave her 5 options. Which one do you think she picked? Well, I'll tell you. She picked this one. She picked the house painting. Does that surprise you? Maybe you think, well, she probably would have picked the flowers or the kiss and the hug or maybe the romantic walk in the forest. But no, honestly, she picked this one. So that shows you that, women are all different. And also men are all different. The way we receive love is it's different. Okay, so his main idea in the book is that people need to learn how to speak their partner's love language. They need to learn how to speak that language if they want to have a really healthy, happy relationship. But the thing is, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's just like learning a real language, like learning English or learning French or, it's hard. It takes years and years before, you're fluent in that language. Okay, so that's what he says. It takes a long time to really be able to communicate effectively, to make that person feel really valued, to make them feel really loved. It's not easy, and that's why a lot of relationships break down. Now, I think this is a great book. Like I said, I've talked a lot about it with a lot of people. I've had a lot of conversations that, where people, like, for example, when I was in India, I met a girl from China, and she told me, I don't know why she told me this, but she said her and her boyfriend was in Hong Kong, I think, and she said that they had some relationship problems. And anyway, we went out to a restaurant to eat, and I told her about the things in this book. And while we were eating and while I was telling her these ideas, her eyes just lit up. It's like a light went on in her head. And she said, now I understand the problems in our relationship. So she was really excited. So I would really recommend this book. I don't agree with everything. Actually, I have some different ideas that I think are even better than the ideas in this book. So maybe I'll write my own book in the future. But hey, I think this is a great book. If you want to get a copy, I'll put the link to this book down there in the description, the link to Amazon. Now you can buy this book in most bookstores in Canada and probably in your country. I think it's been translated into many different languages. So maybe you've even read this book. Have you read this book? Let me know down there in the comments. But if you want to buy it online, I'll put the Amazon link right down there in the comments. Okay, so I want to know, what is your love language? Is it words of affirmation? Is it acts of service? Is it gifts? Is it quality time? Is it physical touch? Let me know your answer down there in the comments. Now remember, Gary Chapman, his idea is that all of these are good, right? They're all good, and we should always give all of these things to, the people that we love. But his idea is that usually a person has one area where they really feel loved and connected. When both people are speaking each other's love language, then they really feel that love and connection. So let me know what your love language is down there in the comments, and I'll see you over in the next episode of Mad English TV. Take care.